When I was in rabbinical school, we were asked if we could pinpoint just one moment or interaction or story that told who we were as Jews, what would it be? If we could only choose one story, what would it be to say who we were as Jews? And I'll ask you the same question. Rabbi Ruberg and I did not coordinate this. We didn't know we were both going to be giving JTS assignments tonight. So you now have homework to do. Think about it. If you could just choose one story to define your Jewish identity, what would it be? Here is mine. I've told it before. Some of you may remember it. It happened on a day when I was just a little kid, getting picked up from school at the end of a school day by our babysitter. My brother and I were in the car, and our babysitter told us, we just have to make one stop on the way. It'll just be a few minutes. You won't be telling any sermons about it, I promise. Well, here I am. I'm telling a story about it. Because the stop we had to make was to church for Ash Wednesday. And that was a topic we hadn't yet covered in Schechter. But I knew one thing about Ash Wednesday, which is that when I got home that day, I didn't want to have accepted a new Lord and Savior. And so I said to myself, how can I tell everyone in that room that I am not here as part of that? And I came up with an idea. I would wear my kippah into church. But it wasn't just any kippah. It was my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kippah. The cartoon heroes of my childhood. And as we walked down that aisle, my brother was mortified. But I have never felt prouder to be Jewish. And over the years, my collection of kippot grew. I had an entire stack to match every t-shirt I owned. Star Wars, the Knicks, the Grateful Dead, Superman, Batman, you name it, I have a kippah for it. It's on my nightstand. I found a way to have fun with my Jewish identity. With each new kippah I got, and every time I put it on my head to start the new day, I loved being Jewish even more. It brought me right back to that moment. And I remember what it means to broadcast who we are and what we stand for every time we go out into the world as Jews. In September of last year, Deborah Lipstadt told the story of one of her students getting in touch with his own Jewish identity. He too wanted to put on a kippah. And as he told Deborah Lipstadt, it was the first time he was doing this. He hadn't worn a kippah in public before, but he decided that now was the time because he felt there was a fresh wave of anti-Semitism. And he wanted to show people what it meant to stand proudly and be Jewish. He wasn't going to let anyone tell him otherwise. And Deborah Lipstadt appreciated his spirit, his enthusiasm, but there was a part of her that felt sad at what this student had decided to do. The boy was not wearing a kippah because of his deep love of Jewish tradition. He did not suddenly start lighting candles. He didn't become a regular at shul. He didn't commit himself to prayer or to serious Torah study. He wore it because he cared what other people thought. And that was what was so disappointing to her. He was motivated by outside hate rather than by love of his religion. As she wrote, he handed our oppressors power over his identity. And as I read the story for myself, I couldn't help but wonder who was right and who was wrong. I see what the student was saying. We could absolutely understand anyone who would want to take off their kippah when life feels hard. And here was somebody who did the very opposite. He felt empowered when he could have hid. Shouldn't that be something to celebrate? But at the same time, she was right. What if we are, in fact, called to our Judaism most when it is dictated on other people's terms? Why do we need to feel scared in order to come together? Why is it that we feel like our best Jewish selves when somebody is out to get us? Like Deborah Lipstadt, I know there has to be more to being Jewish than just that. Why can't we love being Jewish as much when things are good as when they are bad. I believe, as she does, that our Jewish experience cannot be dictated by anti-Semitism alone. The story of this student was published in last September. There was no way she could have known what would happen in October. The world has changed more for Jews in the past year, maybe than at any time in my last 33 years. The threat of anti-Semitism that once felt largely theoretical has come out in fruition in full force. You don't need me to read off a list of all that has changed in the past year. We all know it, maybe not every story, but we've seen it all. And one more casualty of all that is still unfolding has been our sense of Jewish agency. Anti-Semitism has become one of the leading motivators driving Jewish engagement. In that way, it feels like we have lost control of the Jewish narrative. We've always thought of justice as a core Jewish value. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. The idea of justice, justice shall you pursue, has always been a Jewish badge of honor. And now we are being told that our people are unjust. Words that have never had anything to do with our Jewish experience, like colonizer or colonialist, have been jammed into our lexicon. The word Zionist has suddenly become a slur, as if loving and supporting Israel is something to be ashamed of. Our entire Jewish experience has been boiled down by outside sources into simplified black and white narratives that have no reflection on our everyday lived reality. But to focus only on this environment of fear and of hatred would be to ignore all the amazing things that have happened in this past year too. We have seen that there is so much to love about being Jewish. In the past year, 3,000 people have registered for the Reform Movement's Introduction to Judaism program. Hillel International, a critical lifeline for Jewish college students on campus, has seen its largest number of participants ever. And despite the war, close to 14,000 young Jews went on birthright this past summer, seeking to explore their Jewish identities. People want to understand what it is to be Jewish. They want to experience Jewish community and embrace it from a place of positivity. You could add our own temple to the long list of synagogues, Jewish day schools, and other institutions that have experienced healthy growth in this past year. In this community, people who would have recently considered themselves just to be marginal Jews felt more connected to their identities than ever before. Some are getting back in touch with their roots. Others are discovering what they love about Judaism for the very first time. When we woke up on October 8th and saw what the world looked like, we were together, but we all felt very, very lonely. But we took that feeling of isolation and quickly turned it into pride. We put on our kippas. We took our Jewish star necklaces out of our shirts and wore them proudly on our chest. We added dog tags to keep in mind the hostages on those same chains. We put lawn signs on our yards to let the world know that we stand with Israel. And we marched for the hostages in the thick of summer, the dead of winter, and in the pouring rain. We may have put on our kippas at first because we were scared, but we have also found ways to be prouder than ever. We have found opportunities to let our love grow. We're finding the beauty of what Judaism has to offer that goes well beyond just standing up to anti-Semitism. Every year on Yom Kippur, we read the story of Jonah. And the first time that Jonah speaks in the narrative is when he finds himself on a boat with sailors he's never met before who don't know what it is to be Jewish. At the time, God is sending heavy winds and rains at the boat, trying to get to Jonah. And those sailors figure out that it's Jonah that God is after. He's the reason that God is angry. He is trying to get to Jonah. And the sailors ask the stranger, "Who are you? What is your business and where are you from?" And Jonah responds with 2 words, Ivri Anochi. I am a Hebrew. I am a Jew. But I want to share an interpretation of the scene that I learned in preparation for Yom Kippur. The root of the word ivri does not just translate as a Hebrew or as a Jew. It also means sin. If you know the Hebrew word averah, or in Yiddish, avera, it comes from the same root. An averah is the opposite of a mitzvah. Somebody who has done something very bad, committed a terrible transgression. And that is how Jonah sees himself here. Jonah is not saying I'm a Hebrew. He's not saying I'm a Jew. He's saying I sinned. I did something wrong. I have no value. I have no worth. I'm dead weight. I committed an averah, a sin. Throw me to the bottom of the ocean and let me drown. I have no place here. But that is not what the sailors heard. They did not hear the words ivri anochi to mean he sinned. Instead, they heard it as we understand it in the text. They heard him say that he's a Jew. Jonah is apologetic in saying ivri anochi. But the sailors hear Jonah saying, I am a Jew. His Judaism doesn't bring out the worst in people. It brings out the best. Instead of tossing Jonah over the side of the boat, instead of giving up on Jonah, they row harder. They rally behind him. They are inspired by Jonah and they want to be like him. By the end of the story, they worship God. They want to know what it's like to be Jewish. This interpretation of the story could not feel more timely. Now is not a time to apologize for being Jewish. It is not a time to hide. It is a time to declare that we are Jewish, loud and proud. It is time for us to define our identity, declare who we are as Jews, and not let anti-Semites control the narrative. We are Jews. What a privilege it is to say that, to embrace everything that comes with it. That is what being Jewish is, and we should be proud. When that student put on his kippah, his professor saw him driven by fear rather than by love. But maybe his classmates saw them in a way they had never seen him before, standing tall and standing proud. Jonah could only see himself as a transgressor, somebody who had no moral value. But that is not what the sailors saw. They saw him as a proud Jew, and it made all the difference. That is precisely who we should be right now. That is what it means to take back our narrative. A few weeks ago, we were visited by a very special guest. His name is Dan Grunfeld. He came on a Shabbat morning, and he told the story of how his father became the only child of Holocaust survivors to play in any of the four major professional sports. His dad, Ernie Grunfeld, was not only played for the Knicks, he was a general manager of the team when they went to the NBA Finals in the 90s. But the real star of the Grunfeld family never played basketball. It is Dan's grandmother, his Anu, who was 99 years old and sharp as a tack now. She was born and raised in Budapest, and she had a simple but beautiful childhood. She lived for sour cherries and porcini mushrooms. In the summer, when her parents couldn't find her, she was often underneath a tree reading by herself. She lived in a home with no running water, no electricity, no gas, no cars. And Shabbat was the pinnacle of the week. And because they didn't have the technology we do now, every member of the family had to contribute, and Shabbat preparations began early in the week. Everyone had their role, and hers was to pluck feathers from the dead chicken the butcher had slaughtered, one by one. Not my ideal childhood, but some people's. But that ideal childhood came to an end, as it did for all Jews in Europe at that time. Over the course of the war, 3 of her siblings and both of her parents were killed in Auschwitz. When she returned to her empty childhood home after the war, unaware of all that had happened, she was shocked. The white tablecloths, all of the family's silver, the kosher dishes, the bedroom pillows stuffed with goose feathers, everything was gone. Nothing left behind. And a part of her died that day. She searched throughout the house for something left behind, anything, any remnant that they had left behind and left untouched. She went through every single empty drawer until finally she saw something shimmer. It was something that was either regarded as so worthless that it wasn't worth grabbing by the looters, or something they had missed. It was wedged in the back of the drawer, one of the drawers. It was one of her mother's spoons used for ladling milk. It was small, metallic, ordinary. It was worn, it was weathered and scratched, but it was there. She grabbed it from the drawer and held it close to her heart. Aside from what remained inside of her, that spoon was all that was left of her sweet, innocent childhood. They had taken every single thing from her. The Nazis didn't just want to take their belongings. The Nazis wanted to erase the very existence and history of the Jewish people. But there, she had found the one thing that nobody could touch. She kept that spoon in her possession for 75 years before giving it to her grandson, Dan. It now sits in his bed table drawer, where it will stay until it is time to give to his own children. For her, that spoon represented resistance. It was her parents, it was her brothers and her sisters, her childhood. It was love. It had no religious significance, no ritual use, but for her, it became a holy object. And now her grandson holds it close to his heart, the same way that she did. One tiny little spoon that became the most important thing in the world. And for us, it is a reminder that our connection to Judaism can be as simple as a spoon. It can be the Shabbat candlesticks covered with generations worth of wax strippings, the Shabbat tablecloth stained with grape juice from countless kids' meals, the mezuzah you have had since birth, the Passover Haggadah filled with tears of joy and of sadness. It can be a Ninja Turtles kippah. Judaism has so much to offer us, but we have to hold these values close to our heart and let them guide us to be the people we want to be. We should be like Jonah. We should not be like Jonah, apologizing for being Jewish as if it is a sin. We should be like the sailors, instead celebrating what it means to be Jewish. We should never have to hide our spoons in the backs of drawers or up our sleeves. We should use our spoons to pour honey over our apples and capture every sweet moment. We should not have to question if there's a good time or a bad time to put on a kippah. We should be the student who rises to the moment and announces that he is Jewish instead of letting the world scare him. I want to wear my kippah with pride. I want to stand up to this moment. If you have been looking for a sign that it is time to reconnect to your Judaism, then let today be the call to action. Tonight we sang the words of the Kol Nidre. We recounted all the unfulfilled vows we'll have in the year ahead and in the year that passed. I ask you all to take a few seconds to think about your Jewish stories. I'm going to give you more time now. Use tonight to pledge your involvement to yourselves, and use this year to commit. When we come back to Kol Nidre in 1 year, what are the things you can proudly say you did as a Jew in the year that passed? Find your Jewish story and make it your own. When you are asked what brought you to synagogue, why are you marching for Israel, what is your story, have an answer. Find what you love about being Jewish and make that your own. Don't let other people tell you what it is. Define your identity on your own terms. Find what you love about being Jewish. Make it your thing, and be loud and be proud about it.